Hello, this is Joseph Gillette with Venture Capital Cross, and today's video is about public news and how it impacts private companies. And we're going to use the Trump-Musk dispute as an example because everyone is talking about this, even business people, which is really interesting. But it's really nothing new. And so I want to use this opportunity to say how news basically affects the price of companies. And the problem is that most people don't know about private companies. They know about public companies. Everyone knows about stocks. Stocks go up, they go down. So let's first take the example of Tesla. So in April, Elon got an unpaid job trying to cut waste from the federal government, and a lot of people were angry about that, especially the people who are having their budgets cut. And they create a lot of anti-Elon sentiment with news hit pieces talking about he's got a drug problem and he's a bad guy and he's this and that and he's a Nazi and everything else. And the price of Tesla collapsed by 50%. Now, what actually changed with Tesla? Nothing. Actually in many markets, not maybe in the whole country, but like at least in the South and in Texas and a lot of places, sales of Tesla increased because they supported Elon. So if anything, all this, what was happening, was positive for Tesla, but the stock went down because of this news. So markets move, public markets move based on perception. So if you think something's going to happen, you're going to sell your stock based on that perception, even if it's false. So perception is really important. So that's where the media has learned that there's an algorithm that they've tried to game the system. So they know if A happens, then B is going to happen. Like they know that if a certain news article is released at a certain time, the stock is going to behave in a certain way. And why do they know that? Because of experience, history, and simulation modeling. Way before AI, hedge funds and the military have had supercomputers, and those supercomputers can churn out results of complex systems. So they can model, for example, what happens when a nuclear power plant melts down to the molecule, and they can see, well, if they do this, how is it going to affect this? It's a simulation. And they use game theory to model life, society, or markets, how people will react. Let's take a kind of a banal example. There's a food company that has a recall on its product because someone ate too many donuts and they exploded. The stock of that company on the news is going to go down. And then let's say later, as it turns out, that guy it wasn't connected to the donuts. It was the guy stepped on a rusty nail, and that caused his problem. The stock's going to go back up. So news is tricky because it can impact the people react to the news before verifying it, and they assume that journalists are fact-checking that news. And you've got two things going on. Number one, some journalists are just bad journalists, and they will present something as fact when in fact it's not. Number two, you've got paid journalists, and this is a big thing. CNN was paid something like $50 million from Amazon to promote some, and I can put this in the description if anyone's interested, but CNN, like 30 or 40% of the content on CNN is paid. But Amazon paid to display this as advertising as news. So it was like, a company has just developed a new product and blah, blah, blah. So that was their news piece, but it was actually advertising that Amazon had paid for. So you've got that going on. And there's a lot of that. And then you've got deep state capture, for lack of a better word. So you've got, if the government or the CIA or the military wants to, or the FBI wants to elicit a certain outcome, they will use the news media to publish a story to have people react. And the FBI discovered how effective this was regarding a serial killer. And there are some case studies that you can look into. But the government, especially the intelligence community, does actively plant stories in the news which are both true and false in order to get certain reactions. So you've got a lot going on in the news. And then, of course, you've got just like real journalists, and not all journalists are bad. There's a lot of great journalists out there, but it seems like in the last 5 years, journalism has gone towards a certain, like, more opinionated model rather than just hear the facts. You can decide by yourself. And that's fine, but the point is that any news, whether it's any of these things described, is going to impact public companies immediately, because people are going to read the news and they're not going to look into it. They're not going to fact check it. They're not going to think about all these cognitive biases and cognitive dissonance and all these different things going on. The psyops, the game theory where they're trying to problem reaction solution. Put the thing out there as A so that they can B. There's a virus and you need a vaccine, and so you need to give us $100 billion, and all of these things are connected. And I remember, like, in Trump in the 90s, when he was a real estate guy, he was always in the news, and he was so, it seemed like, hated. And I went to school in Palm Beach, and I remember, like, the community on the island always was complaining about him, and he's Trump, is blah 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 blah, and then I watched a documentary recently about Trump, and they asked him, it was during the period where he had all his different marriages and infidelity and everything, and Trump told this reporter, he said, there's no such thing as bad press. It's all advertising for the Trump brand. And I thought that was interesting, and I'm not really a big PR guy. Like, being in Wall Street, we operate on results, not PR, meaning if you're a trader and you made a lot of money, you made like 100% last month trading, that's what's going to gain you new customers, not the fact that you're on Bloomberg talking about markets. But that's my perspective. But it obviously works for Trump, and it works for a lot of people where, your name is your brand and you're just out there, and in that case, all press is good press. So from Trump's perspective, perhaps this whole thing with Elon is actually positive. But let's now talk about private markets. So how did it impact Tesla? It didn't, but it drove the stock down. Now, does the stock impact Tesla's ability to manufacture cars? No. But people's perception will change, and they might buy a Ford instead of a Tesla if they are impacted by this negative press. But private companies are almost insulated, and I want to explain why. So first of all, you can't short sell SpaceX. You can't short sell any private company because it's not liquid. Now, these companies are liquid in the sense that you might be able to sell them, but they're not liquid like with Apple or Tesla stock. You just press a button and sell. There's not instant liquidity, and the prices are not changing like on a day-to-day basis. So the whole thing that happened with Tesla did not happen with Musk's private companies, and this is an important thing to understand. So we always talk about the differences between public and private markets, but in private markets, you're insulated from all of this news cycle volatility, I think is the best way to describe it. You don't have the news cycle volatility. There was even talk about, the government is going to cancel SpaceX's contracts. That is just absurd. That is just like Trump acting like a child. It's just the two of these guys were just equally going back and forth, saying things that just didn't make any sense, just trying to hit each other below the belt, one thing after the other, one thing after the other. So all of this talk about SpaceX is going to have their contracts canceled, it's just ridiculous. And I was talking with some Wall Street people, and it wasn't even clear, were they talking about the EV contracts to Tesla? I mean, there's no scenario where the government can punish someone because they're angry. I mean, that's just absurd. The Democrats certainly did a lot of that, but in the comparison between public and private markets, you're going to not have the news cycle volatility in private markets. So I think that's a good place to end this video, because all the rest of it in this whole debate is really just noise. I mean, nothing was really happening. And so everyone was asking the question, well, why did it happen? I mean, both these are two successful billionaires that understand the futility in having a public feud like that. And I think the best characterization was Elon's dad said, Elon's been doing this for months and he's stressed out. I mean, he's not used to being in the political sphere and having people just throw crap on you, and it caused him to have just negative. He was just freaked out. He didn't have a breakdown. I mean, he's not like doing anything really crazy. He just it causes you to just flip out a little bit sometimes because of the stress, and I think that's understandable. I think people should be understanding of that, and for Trump as well. I mean, when you're saying things to him that are like that, I mean, they both kind of are. It's not really fair for the people, I think, to take sides like, well, it's his fault or his fault. And obviously the left is using this as a divide and conquer strategy, but really nothing happened. I mean, at the end of the day, what's happening in Los Angeles is a real thing. What happened between Trump and Musk is a big nothing burger, as they say, because it was just two guys who were just I don't know what you want to describe it as. They can describe it, but it was really, as far as markets are concerned, it was just noise. That's not something that has impact on your business. And Tesla stock did go down, but it always goes down when Elon has these tantrums, or whatever you want to call it, online spats. So does that really impact Tesla? I think Kevin O'Leary said the best is, this happens. Tesla shareholders are used to the volatility, but over time, it's going up. I mean, there was a period where, this was a while ago, but there was a period where people thought Tesla might be bankrupt because when they first started building these gigafactories, the sales were not there to really match their capital expenditures. So at that time, the stock was, there were some hedge funds with massive short positions in Tesla. So the bottom line is that private markets don't have the type of volatility that public markets have. Of course, there are other kinds of risks, but as far as this news cycle and noise, you don't have that problem. So that's my view, is that private markets are going to grow and public markets are going to shrink for these and many other reasons, not the reverse. A lot of people think that, well, private markets eventually are going to be kind of, it's an opportunity that just exists it's like a market discrepancy which arbitrage is going to overcome. But I actually think that there are benefits to private markets, and as they become more robust, we're going to see more shift to being private than being public. So that's all for now. This is Joseph Gillette with Venture Capital Cross. We have a Udemy course and a book that'll be available if you want to learn more. We look forward to seeing you soon.